What is the difference between intuitive eating and overeating? One of you asked me this question on a recent video, and I think it's a really good question because from the outside, if you haven't tried intuitive eating before or you're new to it, it can definitely just look like it involves a lot of overeating. So what is intuitive eating? For a short answer, it's pretty much just following your body's signals about when to eat and how much to eat and what to eat, rather than listening to calorie guidelines or the diet industry or anything like that. And there's a lot of good research on intuitive eating showing that it helps with binge eating, so it helps you binge less, helps with weight loss, helps with body confidence, and makes people happier. So there's a lot of good solid research out there showing that intuitive eating works and it's a good idea. In addition to there being a lot of great scientific evidence for how good intuitive eating is for you, I also have a lot of personal experience with how great it is because it is the reason I am no longer binging and restricting at all. So I pretty much yo-yo dieted and binge/restricted for over a decade, and thanks to intuitive eating, I can now effortlessly maintain a healthy weight without any sort of dieting, restricting, or worrying about it at all. And that is why I talk about intuitive eating so much here, because it's made a huge difference in my life. I feel like I've really been blessed with this, and I just want to pass it on and help you guys get food freedom too. So the question I'll be answering for this video is, how do you eat intuitively without overeating? Because it definitely seems like it would be easy to go from, I'll eat whatever I want, whenever I want, as much as I want, to, I'm gonna stuff my face. Hey there, I'm Mish, and I am a PhD candidate sharing studies and science to help you reach your weight loss, fitness, health, and nutrition goals. When you first start out with intuitive eating, it can definitely feel like overeating, especially if you're coming from a background of binging or restricting. Because when you're in a restriction mindset, it's really easy to think that the only way that you can prevent yourself from overeating and blowing up is to micromanage every single calorie or food you put in your body. At least that's how I used to feel. I used to be convinced that unless I strictly controlled all of my food intake, I would just immediately blow up and be overweight. But that is a lie, and it is sold to you by the diet industry because they stand to make a lot of money off of you thinking that you need them. But in reality, all you need are your own physiological signals to let you maintain a healthy weight. Because our bodies are naturally built in with hunger and fullness cues that can guide us to get enough energy from our food without overeating and storing it as fat. And that is what intuitive eating is all about. We were all born with these mechanisms that tell us when to eat and how much to eat and when to stop, but after years of diet culture and just how our society tends to treat food, most of us have overwritten our ability to listen to these internal cues with all sorts of external advice and diet plans and that kind of thing. And the whole goal of intuitive eating is to learn how to tune back into your own physiological signals instead of all these external influences, like how much you think you should eat or when society tells you it's lunchtime and those kinds of things. But learning this skill takes time, just like any other skill, especially if you've been dieting for a long time or if you were raised in a situation where you were kind of encouraged to not follow your hunger and fullness cues. For example, if you were forced to clean your plate, or if you had to wait till dinner and weren't allowed to have snacks when you were hungry in the afternoon, or if you were forced to eat a lot of foods you didn't want to eat at the time, then you learned that your eating should not actually be driven by internal cues. It should be driven by what other people think you should eat or what you think you should eat because of what other people say. So you can't expect to just wake up one morning and magically be able to perfectly follow your hunger and fullness cues if it's not something you've already been doing. And the longer you've been entrenched in diet culture, the longer it's gonna take. And that's fine. It's not supposed to be an instant quick fix. It took me years to figure it out, and I'm still not perfect at it, obviously. But the key is I no longer feel guilty if I mess up. Like sometimes I overeat, and that's fine. It doesn't get in the way of my long-term goals. It's just a learning opportunity. And that's also an important part of intuitive eating. It's that you shouldn't feel guilt about anything you're eating unless it hurts someone else to eat it. And that's why I'm vegan, because I don't want to eat foods that are hurting my animal friends. But besides that, anything vegan, I don't feel guilty about eating it. With intuitive eating, and especially when you're first learning it, there will be times when you overeat occasionally. And the key is how you respond to those times. So if you beat yourself up and feel really guilty and ashamed, that is a perfect recipe to just keep overeating or even give up completely on intuitive eating. But if you show yourself compassion and acknowledge that it's part of the process and that you're getting better every day, that's gonna lead to long-term success. And studies even show that self-compassion is one way to stop a binge while it's happening. And in fact, as you get better at intuitive eating, you'll find that there isn't a motivation to overeat, because overeating isn't fun. Like, eating past fullness is uncomfortable. That's why it's past fullness. And I don't think anyone really enjoys walking around with a giant food baby and feeling sick and like nauseous and stuff. So once you learn to eat intuitively, it's pretty clear that overeating a lot and intuitive eating are mutually exclusive, because the goal of intuitive eating is to learn to listen to your body's signals, including when you're full. So you eat when you're hungry and you stop when you're full, and that completely prevents overeating in any significant way. And maybe you're saying, no, I'm a hopeless case. Like, if I just let go of all my food rules and really tried intuitive eating, I would just go to McDonald's every day, have it for every meal, and just blow up. And without intuitive eating, maybe that could happen if you keep beating yourself up about it over and over and end up in a cycle of binging and whatnot. But with intuitive eating, you know that McDonald's is no longer a forbidden food. In fact, nothing is a forbidden food anymore. So that actually takes a lot of the excitement out of eating those bad things and overeating, because it's no longer a limited resource. It's kind of like teenagers with alcohol, where when you're a teenager, alcohol sounds like so alluring and exciting and amazing and fun and stuff, you know? And then once you're older, it's just, you go to get a beer with friends, and sometimes maybe you don't even feel like a beer. At least that's how it is for me. And once you take the forbiddenness out of junk foods, it can actually make you crave them a lot less, because a big reason we crave things like that is specifically because they're not allowed, because it's the forbidden fruit idea. But as I alluded to, without intuitive eating, you could end up in this cycle of overeating. And one thing that causes that is actually just the guilt and obsessing over overeating. So if you're constantly paranoid about eating too much and really stressed about it, that's actually going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the stress of worrying about overeating actually makes you way more likely to overeat. And because you constantly are thinking overeating, 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 it's just going to make it a lot more likely to happen. It's kind of like with a relationship. Let's say you have a happy relationship, but then one day you just start to get a little bit paranoid that your boyfriend is cheating on you. And you get more and more paranoid, you obsess over it, you're stressed out, you're less happy when you're with him, you're kind of snappy with him, you're looking through his phone. All that obsessing over worrying about him cheating on you is actually probably going to mess up your relationship, even if there was no problem to begin with. And it's very similar with overeating, where if you weren't constantly worried about overeating and weight gain and just let your body do its thing, you'd actually be a lot less likely to overeat and a lot less likely to gain weight. So instead, the key is to approach things from a growth mindset and a self-compassionate mindset. So it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Literally no one is perfect at anything. So expecting perfection from yourself is just a recipe for failure. But if you give it a try and just try to do your best and forgive yourself when you fail, that's the recipe for sustainable success in the long term and learning how to get better at it. So in my case, when I was learning to eat intuitively and I was overeating pretty often, like I binged pretty much every night for the first couple of weeks because I was just figuring out what was happening and my body was like, whoa, I can eat again. When those times happened and I binged, I would just tell myself, it's okay. This is part of the process. I'm learning, I'm growing. Soon I won't have to worry about binging anymore. I just have to get through this part where I let myself eat what I want and then my body will calm down. So I just believed it would work out. I believed in myself, I believed in the process, and I just chose not to freak out about it. And it worked. Here I am, years later, haven't binged in years, and it is an amazing feeling to never have to worry about binge eating, because binge eating sucks. I'm sorry if you're dealing with it right now. And to go back to our McDonald's example, if you really think that you are a hopeless case, where if you were left to your own devices, you would just eat mountains of junk for every meal, there are still some tools you can use to nudge yourself in the right direction in a way that fits into intuitive eating principles. So as a reminder, the main principles of intuitive eating are eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, eat what you're craving, and don't police your food behavior. So like no food rules. And so in this case, if you are craving McDonald's for a meal, you should get it because you should eat what you're craving. But one way to help yourself eat a little bit healthier and nudge yourself towards weight loss is to, for example, add something very low calorie density and healthy to each of your McDonald's meals. So for example, before each time you eat your McDonald's, you could tell yourself, I'm gonna eat a potato. So I'm gonna have one potato before my McDonald's. And then another principle of intuitive eating is to stop when you're full. So if you eat a potato, before your McDonald's, then you're not going to have as much room for the McDonald's. And so you'll end up eating a smaller proportion of junk and a larger proportion of healthy food than you would have otherwise. So you can harness these principles of intuitive eating in a way that can nudge yourself towards healthy eating without restricting any foods or cutting out anything that you want to be able to eat. So to get back to the main question, when you are first starting with intuitive eating, it can definitely seem like overeating because you no longer have your strict diet rules or micromanaging of how much you're eating. But if you just stick with it and forgive yourself when you do overeat and just trust in the process and really try to listen to your body's signals, you're going to find that intuitive eating and overeating are actually mutually exclusive. Like, you can't really do both, and you don't want to overeat anymore. And that is why a lot of research and my own experience and a lot of other people's experience shows that intuitive eating is great for weight loss because it actually prevents overeating better than any other kind of diet. So I hope this answered the question well. Let me know if you have any other questions about intuitive eating or health, nutrition, fitness, and any of the other topics I cover. If you like the video, please share and like it. It would help me out a lot. And if you haven't already subscribed, press the subscribe button below to keep up on my videos. And thank you so much for watching. See you next time.